Once again, the Academy Awards find themselves at the center of an Oscars so white controversy. And I can kind of understand both sides of this. For one thing, 2019 has to be one of the weakest years for movies I can remember. And so the Academy obviously had a challenging time picking performances out of great movies and picking great performances out of great movies. The thing about that is, though, is I have to ask, what kind of movies is the Academy being paid to watch? So I decided to make, so as usual, I did my own, if I picked the nominees this year, and this is just what I think. Now, this year I really tightened down on my list. I still only picked a short list of 10 supporting actors and actresses, and I did only a short list of only 12 leading actor and actresses. Now, this is a combination of, unlike the last few years where I had a lot more to pick from and I excluded what was nominated, I picked a combination of performances that were nominated and ones that weren't, and these are just the ones that I thought. Best Supporting Actress, Imogen Poots, The Art of Self-Defense, one of the most underrated movies I saw this year. I thought she was fantastic in that. Karen Kyle Livers from Burning Cane, a movie that is the kind of movie that I think every young aspiring filmmaker wishes they could make, the kind of first feature they wish they could make. Divine Joy Randolph from Dolomite Is My Name. She plays Lady Reed, the actress who, and what's amazing what she has to do here is she's an actress having to play another actress who was not very good at being an actress. Zhao Shuzhen from The Farewell, playing the grandmother. This was one I really was surprised didn't get nominated. Next is Jennifer Lopez for Hustlers. She was, of course, got a Golden Globe nomination for this, and she was obviously the one that was probably one of the most controversial snubs that started this controversy. One of the things that Jennifer Lopez proves in this movie is that she actually is a very talented actress. She was obviously in a movie based on a true story back in the 90s called Selena, and then she was in a really good thriller with George Clooney called Out of Sight. It's obviously a movie about strippers, but it's in the style of like a cross between like an Ocean's film and Magic Mike, where it's funny and it's a funny heist film, but there's also a great deal of humanity injected into these characters, and Jennifer Lopez gave easily one of the best performances of the year in this film. Florence Pugh for Little Women. She's one that's definitely nominated for Best Supporting Actress. She was a great interpretation of that character. Octavia Spencer for Loose. This was a wonderful acting film, full of great performances, and Octavia Spencer, every year it seems like she always got nominated for this award, and the one year where I thought, oh, she needs to get nominated for this, she didn't. Laura Dern for Marriage Story. She's obviously nominated for this, and I think she'll probably win at the ceremony. Margot Robbie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I didn't see Bombshell, which is the movie she's nominated for, but I definitely thought she was really good in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, playing Sharon Tate, who obviously gets a little bit of her history changed. And then lastly is Julie Walters for Wild Rose. This movie is strikingly similar to A Star is Born, and I actually think the acting in this one is honestly a lot stronger, because this one is like if the parent in the film was actually also a main character, and that I thought was really cool. So yeah, this is my list, and if I had picked the nominees, they would have been Jennifer Lopez, Hustlers; Imogen Poots, The Art of Self-Defense; Zhao Shuzhen, The Farewell; Octavia Spencer, Loose; and Julie Walters for Wild Rose. So Best Supporting Actor now, Alessandro Nivola for The Art of Self-Defense really plays just this embodiment of stereotypical masculinity that he ultimately becomes the villain of this story. Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Yeah, Tom Hanks did a very good job really embodying Fred Rogers in this film. The way he talked, the body language, and just this magnetism and just this immediate likability he brought to the character of Fred Rogers, which is all the things you need to play that character. Wendell Pierce for Burning Cane, playing this alcoholic preacher at this like church, at this like southern church. Um, it was a very heart-wrenching performance. Adam Pearson for Chained for Life. In a year that we had such a controversy around diversity, one of the things that this movie addresses isn't just the lack of diversity in films, but the lack of inclusion of people with disabilities and deformities. Adam Pearson was the guy who played in Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson a couple years ago, and in this, it's a very it's a movie where he again plays a guy with physical deformities, except he actually is an actor in this film. Patrick Schwarzenegger for Daniel Isn't Real. This was like this year's Mandy for me. Uh, and Patrick Schwarzenegger plays this evil imaginary friend who acts as both the angel and the devil sitting on the main character's shoulders. Al Pacino and Joe Pesci for The Irishman. Uh, I double put this one because it was hard deciding which of the two of them I liked more. Oh, one of my favorites of the year is Willem Dafoe for The Lighthouse. He sells this Mr. Krabs crossed with the sea captain from The Simpsons, and it was one of the most haunting performances and one of the most haunting movies of the year. Bekali Ganimbar, I think I'm saying that right, from The Nightingale, plays this native in the film who, it's obviously a critique on colonialism, and one of the best scenes that I thought in the film is a scene when he is invited to eat at the dinner table with white people, and he just breaks down because, one, you get that this is the one time this guy has probably ever been treated like a human being, and two, just heartbroken at the fact that this is his country and his home that has been taken over. Jack Dylan Grazer for Shazam, one of the funniest supporting performances of the year. I loved Shazam. It was probably my favorite superhero film of the year. Anthony Hopkins for The Two Popes. This is a film obviously bolstered by its performances, and Anthony Hopkins not only really brings a sense of complexity to Pope Benedict, who was not very well liked for the countless scandals that the Catholic Church endured during his rule. It is a greatly sympathetic portrait of him. It's not something that's just hateful. Now, I picked 6 because of the double billing of Al Pacino and Joe Pesci, but my picks for Best Supporting Actor would have been Willem Dafoe, The Lighthouse, Bekali Ganimbar, The Nightingale, Anthony Hopkins, The Two Popes, Alessandra Nivola, The Art of Self-Defense, and Al Pacino and Joe Pesci, both for The Irishman. For Best Leading Actress, my shortlist includes Caitlin Denver and Beanie Feldstein for Booksmart. They're the new Michael Cera and Jonah Hill in a movie that is basically the new Superbad. Jess Wixler for Chained for Life. She's the actress who is this normal, beautiful, cookie-cutter white girl in a film that she's having to share with people with deformities, and that's exactly what the film is kind of this portrait of. Awkwafina for The Farewell. She was really good in this. Really, she's obviously was this year's like comedian kind of showing. They have a serious side in a movie that was funny but was also very sad. Elizabeth Moss for Her Smell. Elizabeth Moss in this film is almost too good for the movie. She's playing this just party hard, die young, live fast, die young rock star who almost completely capsizes the movie because it gets to the point where in the first half that it almost becomes one note, but then luckily in the second half there's this huge sympathetic and redeeming, final act that really shows two sides of one performance that I loved. Constance Wu for Hustlers. I didn't like her quite as much as Jennifer Lopez, but I definitely liked her in this. She was one of the only things I liked about that really bad romantic comedy from last year, Crazy Rich Asians. I thought she was probably the best thing about that movie, and she was the only thing that I thought made it endurable. Renee Zellweger for Judy. I didn't think she was the best comeback performance of the year. There were plenty others: Joe Pesci, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Eddie Murphy, which I'll get to in a second. But she was very good. She really did look like Judy Garland. I believed every step of the way that I was watching a movie about Judy Garland. Naomi Watts for Loose. Naomi Watts plays a mother who is convinced that her adopted son is behind this huge manipulative conspiracy at his school that involves domestic terror. Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story. This is probably one of Scarlett Johansson's best performances. Something that is so refreshing to see after she's been mostly just Black Widow for almost 10 years now. Florence Pugh, Fighting with My Family, Midsommar. She was very good in Little Women. Like, she was one that all of a sudden, like, exploded on the scene. Her biggest claim to fame this year was, either Little Women or Midsommar. I thought she did really good in Midsommar, and then Fighting with My Family, which wasn't quite as good as either of those films. Her role as this WWE up-and-coming wrestler for the WWE was really, really funny, really sweet movie that I found surprising. Aisling Françoisi, I think it's how you say her name, the Nightingale. This is another like rape and revenge story that has a point in our post-Me Too world. Lupita Nyong'o for Us. This Us, which was I was really surprised that this one didn't stick around as much as Get Out did. But Lupita Nyong'o was probably the biggest shock of the year that she didn't get nominated, having to play both the villain and hero of this movie simultaneously and having to face off against herself. Jessie Buckley for Wild Rose. She's playing, obviously, this, like, the Lady Gaga character from A Star is Born. My picks for Best Leading Actress would be Jessie Buckley, Wild Rose, Aisling Françoisi, The Nightingale, Scarlett Johansson, Marriage Story, Elizabeth Moss, Her Smell, and Lupita Nyong'o for Us. And finally, here's a Best Leading Actor. Eddie Murphy for Dolomite Is My Name. This was probably my favorite return to form performance of the year. As much as I loved The Irishman and Hustlers, Eddie Murphy at playing Rudy Ray Moore, who wants to be famous for, be this famous comic and this blaxploitation cinema star. Another major surprise with this year was Zac Efron as Ted Bundy in Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. It was probably the weakest film out of all of these that I picked, but one of the things that Zac Efron does to this character is he really points out that, because one of the things you hear about Ted Bundy is, he was so handsome. The thing is, he was more than that. He was also smart, and he was charismatic, and that's one of the things that this movie really looks at, and Zac Efron brings all of those things. Robert De Niro for The Irishman. It's the kind of performance that made us want to see Robert De Niro be a movie star. This is obviously for everyone as a part of this movie. Martin Scorsese as the director, the supporting cast of Joe Pesci and Al Pacino. This is the return to the gangster and crime films of the 80s and 90s that are just now considered classics. Joaquin Phoenix for Joker. This will go down as one of the most remembered, most talked about acting performances ever, mainly because the film was just so divisive. But even as many people as that didn't like Joker, one of the things I think everyone can agree on is Joaquin Phoenix is just fantastic as in this film as Arthur Fleck, the man who becomes Joker after society disposes of him. Robert Pattinson, The Lighthouse. This is one of the most disturbing films I watched this year, and something that is, you don't realize how small it actually is because it's such a great movie. It's such a great looking movie and such a great made movie. You don't realize how small scale it actually is with only 2 people in the cast. And Robert Pattinson, this is once again much like what happened with Good Time. He's getting snubbed for one of the best performances of the year. Kelvin Harrison Jr. for Loose. I think he was in one other thing, and I'm trying to think what that was. Oh, he was the son in It Comes at Night from a few years ago. He, in this movie, plays the son of the adopted son of these wealthy, white, well-to-do parents, and he begins to act in a way that makes people question on whether or not he is planning some sort of if he's plotting something. And it's funny watching him slowly manipulate people around him into intentionally making them think that. Adam Driver for Marriage Story. The scene that I most felt his performance was the argument scene where he punches the hole in the wall was really good. and then the scene where he cuts himself with a razor blade, which is just funny. That was a really, really great movie with a really good leading performance in it from him. Zach Gottsagen and Shia LaBeouf, both for the Peanut Butter Falcon. Just like Adam Pearson in Chain for Life, this is a movie about with an actor with a disability and playing a character that isn't defined by that disability. There's so much more to this character in a movie that really doesn't even say anything about having Down syndrome. It just puts a character with Down syndrome in the same kind of film that would work with anybody. And Shia LaBeouf, who is, despite all of his personal flaws, gives a really good performance in this film as the other half of this duo that the two of them make. Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, playing a very funny and very sad actor who is on his way out, who's slowly fading in the spotlight. Jonathan Pryce as Pope Francis and the Two Popes. A great acting piece. Just, again, it was a terrific performance and a great acting piece. Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems. This, I think, was the one that really knocked people down in 2019. You could see this character being in one of his comedies and being just as unlikable, and yet it works here because he's supposed to be. This character really is just puts himself into situations because he's so self-destructive, and he obviously has this addiction to gambling that just puts him in a deeper and deeper hole the more he's trying to dig his way out of a hole. And then lastly, Andrew Garfield for Under the Silver Lake. This movie, I didn't know what to think about this movie. I'm going to have to rewatch this movie I don't know how many times to really figure out what I think about it. But this was one of the completely against type performances for Andrew Garfield, playing this wacky slacker dude who is obsessed with this girl that he just met, and it takes him on this huge path through this weird cross between David Lynch's Mulholland Drive and Scooby-Doo. And my picks for Best Leading Actor would be Eddie Murphy, Dolomite Is My Name, Robert Pattinson, The Lighthouse, Joaquin Phoenix, Joker, Jonathan Pryce, The Two Popes, and Adam Sandler, Uncut Gems. One last thing I want to do before is point out my favorite ensemble pieces for the year, which is something I know other award shows do best ensembles, and I think the Academy Awards and Golden Globes need to do this too. But best ensembles, Avengers Endgame pretty much speaks for itself. Climax, the entire cast of dancers who become distinct, even though I can't remember anyone's name. I remember all their faces and what they kind of have going on, what kind of defines them in one of the strangest and most bizarre dance movies ever made. It Chapter 2, which includes Andy Bean, Jessica Chastain, Bill Hader, James McAvoy, Isaiah Mustafa, James Ransone, Jay Ryan, and of course Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. Knives Out, the entire family, as well as the nurse who gets caught up in this murder mystery, and really the crown jewel in this film, I think, was Daniel Craig as this southern version of like Hercule Poirot or Jane Marple from Agatha Christie novels. And then Parasite, the family from Parasite. I think there was lots of other really good performances that I would have liked to have seen more of. One is the rich lady who their family is working for, and the housekeeper who is hiding this terrible secret that just complicates everything for this family that has tricked this wealthy family into hiring them. The family in this movie, they're obviously the main characters, and they're the ones that really each get an equal bit of screen time. So yeah, those are my picks, and it's not that my opinions matter or anything, they're just my opinions, but the Academy really has to think about what are people really going to respond to? Which movies did people really like? No one is going to be talking about Richard Jewell or Bombshell 10 years from now, so why nominate those films at all? There were plenty of other performances, not just by people of color, but just people in general, and that's what people need to look at. So yeah, the Academy, if they really want people to still consider them relevant and watch their award ceremony, they've got to get with what people want, and it's something it's something they're going to have to really because this is now the third time this has happened within 5 years, and so yeah, that it's a mess. But yeah, I'll have videos for my top 10 best of the year coming up in probably the week before the ceremony. So check those out.